Welcome to the Organic Matrix. On this episode, we're going to be going over life before the Institutional Review Board. The Institutional Review Board is a board that reviews human experimentation, animal experimentation, and determines whether practices are ethical and safe for the subjects. But it wasn't always so. Today, we're going to be discussing a few cringe cases that happened in the 1900s. Viewers' discretion advised. A few of the things we're talking about today is going to be a bit graphic, and it's little pieces of our history. So keep that in mind, and I hope you enjoy. The Institutional Review Board is a standard part of the scientific landscape, but has not always been there. It's a relatively recent innovation and one that has evolved. The IRB process started as an experiment on human subject protection and has soon become an essential part of the way we do science. When scientists conduct research today, they must consider whether any of their subjects will be vulnerable to harm due to participating in the experiment. They also need to consider whether their work raises any kind of other ethical issues. In this segment, we're going to be discussing the cases that happened before the IRB was implemented. Human subjects protection, the early years. Human subject protection has a long history. The FDA was established in 1906. According to FDA.gov, the 1906 Act was passed thanks to Harvey Wiley's efforts and in response to the public outrage at the shockingly unhygienic conditions in Chicago stockyards. Described in Upton Sinclair's book, The Jungle. The first case we'll be discussing is the Poison Squad. In 1906, Harvey Wiley recruited 12 unmarried men to eat food contaminated with borax, sialic acid, sulfuric acid, sodium benzoate, and formaldehyde. This group was eventually named the Poison Squad. Now, I wonder if Harvey Wiley pushed for the FDA to start regulating these experiments because he was either guilty or if he was trying to protect himself from the public that was outraging because of these policies. It's very interesting. I wonder if he's a hero or if he's a villain trying to protect himself. But nonetheless, let me go on. These 12 men agreed to eat this contaminated food for at least 6 months, and they waived all liability for damages. In return, they received free food for 5 years. Did this food still contain these toxins within? Or was the food actually clean? What would you do if you were offered 5 years of free food to be a human test subject? Would that be something you're interested in? Or would it be something that you'd be like, absolutely not? Leave in the comment below what you would do. The purpose of this experiment was to test the toxicity of preservatives. The researchers would then test the food for any evidence of contamination by collecting samples from both healthy individuals and those who suffered from flu-like symptoms such as fever, nausea, and vomiting. The next case coming up completely grosses me out. The Jungle. The Jungle was a novel by Upton Sinclair, published in 1906. Its critique of the meatpacking industry, which was considered one of the most dangerous workplaces in America at the time. It was revealed as a grotesque reality. In this book, it was described that immigrants would apply to work in hopes of achieving the American dream. The workers' work ethic was so strong that they would work through dangerous conditions without complaining. I wonder if these conditions influenced the name of the generation that was working at this time. In 1938 through 1901, that generation was called Lost. The generation before that one was called the Missionaries. Sinclair emphasizes how foul the air would smell and how black smoke would pour out of the building and how the workers would hear screams of the animals constantly in the air. He would also mention how terrible the smell would be coming from the meat in the factory and how it would attract rodents like rats. The rodents brought disease to the factory and made conditions worse. You know, where there's rodents and roaches, there's feces. So that must have been really gross. Not to mention, this facility had no washing areas, so the employees were obligated to have their lunch breaks with dirty hands, probably contaminated with salmonella. Ooh. How many people do you think went vegetarian after working in that factory? Leave it in the comments below. Can you imagine applying for a job to achieve the American dream and you're stuck with conditions like that? It's like you're striving for your dream and you're working in hellish conditions. So, how much does that dream really cost in sacrifice? This reminds me of the watchmaking factories that used to use radium as a glow in the dark paint, where women were painting with this glow in the dark toxic chemical that they later found out that when exposed, their jaws would literally get so weak that it would fall out from their face. Yeah, this reminds me of the radium factories. That's some jaw-dropping news, isn't it? But thank God for President Roosevelt. President Roosevelt urged Congress to pass the Meat Inspection of 1906. This act required the Department of Agriculture to inspect factories in the meat industry across the states. Sulfanilamide, disaster of 1937. In 1937, the Massengill Company created a drug called sulfamaldehyde. This drug was meant to be an antibiotic fluid, which was being used to treat bacterial infections. Unfortunately, this drug contained ethylene glycol. Ethylene glycol is antifreeze. This drug was being used for its own monetary sake, without medical supervision. And when taken in large doses, it can cause severe damage to your liver and your kidneys. Oh, this reminds me of the opiate disaster we're currently going through when there's things like kratom and THC and CBD, but where doctors were prescribing opiates to people knowing that it's highly addictive and could destroy their lives. Reminds me of that. In 1937, doctors prescribed sulfamaldehyde for pneumonia and other illnesses like earaches and colds. The drug had become so popular that pharmacies gave it out throughout America after World War I. One study found that 9 million people were taking it at one point during their lifetime. This product killed at least 107 people on record. If 9 million people took this drug and only 107 people on record passed away, like, we can all do the math. Like, there was probably more people that passed away, and it's probably just not on record. So, yeah. At the time, the FDA didn't even have the power to take this product off the shelves. That really puts things into perspective. After that, the FDA started striving for more power to start toxic products off the market. In 1937, the FDA had the authority to only take products off the shelf if it was mislabeled. Illness in the community increased, and so did public outrage. The following year, in 1938, the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act was passed. This legislation granted the FDA power to remove unsafe foods from the market. Thalidomide tragedy of 1962. Thalidomide was a prescription drug used to treat morning sickness in pregnant women, and it was also sold as a sleeping pill, which led to widespread use. In 1961, thalidomide was found to cause congenital disabilities, including missing limbs and shortened arms, a condition called phocomelia. It was withdrawn from the market by its manufacturer in 1961 after being linked with these effects. Thalidomide is that it cannot be traced back to one doctor or lab. Instead, many people knew about it before anyone else did, and they didn't act on their knowledge. I can only imagine how those mothers felt giving birth to their babies with these health defects, having no idea what they did wrong. Like, even though it wasn't their fault, they were taking this toxic medication that was marketed to pregnant women. Can you imagine taking a product that's supposed to take away your morning sickness, and then you give birth to a baby that has no arms or no legs? I can't even process how they would feel. Like, the thing that really bothers me the most is that there were scientists and doctors that knew about it and didn't say anything because money. Cue Pink Floyd. Today and beyond, the Institutional Review Board is vital to ethical research. They help us understand how we can do better in the future regarding human and animal experimentation, and how we can learn from our mistakes, because that's super important. We have to learn from our mistakes. The RRB also plays an essential role in ensuring that our research subjects are fully informed consent before participating in studies. This means they understand and feel comfortable about what they're getting into. I wonder if the Poison Squad was fully informed that they were testing preservatives that might have been toxic. and like that was what their food was laced with. Do you think that would have influenced their decision on being test subjects or not? Leave in the comments below. I definitely want to hear what you think about this. Today, the RB continues. With our current technological advancements in regards to manufacturing mRNA vaccines and our most recent developments, in today's culture, I personally think it's very important to inform you guys about the IRB and the practices that were taking place before those guidelines were implemented. Rises my attention to how medical technology is evolving today with the manufacturing of mRNA vaccines and how CRISPR kits are like becoming the new thing. So keep in mind that these policies didn't take place until the public became aware and until the public demanded that there was going to be some safety guidelines. So keep that in mind as technology advances and these new things come out that's promoting our health and wellness. Remember, these case stories take a sacrificial role. They give us insight on our future. Like history often repeats itself. So be aware and just know, and sometimes things slip by the FDA. Until recently, however, it had no authority over what could be done with that same data after it left the lab. And sometimes even before it went. The first thing the IRB does is review all research proposals before submitting them for federal funding or approval by an institutional review board. This includes clinical trials, basic science experiments on humans and animals. Although the IRB has came a really long way in regards to protecting human subjects and animals, there is still a lot of work to be done. It is going to be a constantly evolving phenomenon. But as long as people like you and me are willing to push for change, that work will continue. If these case studies struck your interest and you have some opinions and thoughts or suggestions, please leave them in the comments below. You can find us on Facebook, on the link in the description. We also have a Twitter, so feel free to tag us in organic_matrix at Twitter. And our Instagram is the Organic Matrix Podcast. If you have a story and these kind of subjects pique your interest, I want you to be a guest on our podcast. So please reach out to me at theorganicmatrix@gmail.com so that we can collaborate and spread awareness about philosophy and holistic wellness. And stay safe and read your labels and download EWG. The Environmental Working Group does third-party testing for a lot of the products that we use today. They provide us full transparency on the side effects, a lot of the preservatives in our perfumes, makeups, cleaning supplies, and brings us awareness on what household items around us could be causing us illness without our awareness. Thank you for joining us today on this episode of the Organic Matrix, and I'll see you on the next download.